back to
Yes.
Brisbane this morning.
And then I've done Brisbane Mackay, home from Mackay today, did a bag change in the car park, and now I'm flying to Albury this evening via Sydney. So it's been a little hectic. I'm feeling like a flight attendant.
That's three
Just without the perks. It is Tuesday tomorrow. Yeah, it's crazy. It's a little bit ridiculous, but it'll be a good day too. I've got a good session tomorrow. I've got a workshop tomorrow in Albury, and it'll be lots of fun. And I hear you've had a hectic day too, doing something that we both absolutely love, doing some continuing education for yourself.
Yes, I'm actually super, super pumped. It's Murray Smith's first social media strategist certification. So I'm in the first group, which is really exciting to be the first lot of people to be certified. However, I haven't done my exam or assignment yet, so I shouldn't say I'm certified at all. And it's through AY, which is a really incredible organization in the States. So I've had many 5 a.m. starts for being on the live recording, the live sessions, and lots of study. It's been a lot, Jenny, but I'm pumped. I'm now at countdown time till it's nearly over.
I love that you're doing it because it shows people that doesn't matter what stage of your business you're at, no matter where you're at, that continuous learning is something that we talk about all the time, and making sure that we're still doing things to build our knowledge, build our skills, and also connecting with other people within the industry. And that course does all those things for you, plus gets you certified. So it's such a cool thing for you to do.
Absolutely. I can't agree more. And there's so much of it that I know, but it's fascinating hearing it be taught in a different way, for example, or just a few little things that she said that I've just gone, that made sense in a different way. So I've thoroughly enjoyed the experience of it. It's been really very, very good. And you're right. I love constant learning.
But I think also it's good for you to recognise, to be in a group of international students essentially doing a course like that, and recognise that the knowledge that you're sharing with your clients here is at that same level and you're already sharing that knowledge. It's a pretty cool thing. It's a bit of validation. I know we don't all need validation, but to get it occasionally through that indirect way to go, actually, this isn't something I already teach, but I like the way that you're doing it differently. That's a really cool piece. It kind of shows that you can level up the way that you talk about your work. But it also validates you and places you in the same realm as the work that Murray Smith's doing, which I think is pretty phenomenal. And I'm excited for you.
Thank you. And there's one really cool thing too, which is that we all have study buddies. And my study buddy's in Hungary, and she's a website developer and social media strategist as well. So that's really exciting. I'm getting to a little Zoom, messenger chat with my buddy in Hungary. So that's cool.
I love that. That's very, very cool. So it's interesting that we're talking about doing Zoom chats and having a study buddy and how you're connecting with that, because our today's topic is the how and what of communication, not just in business, but generally, although we're talking about business in the workplace today. But that idea of having a study buddy or a mentor or someone to support you is so important in training and in courses, just as it is like when you're in a business and when you're managing your staff, isn't it?
Yes, and I would like to start by saying that I actually did my degree in communications, and it was the first one in New Zealand that had ever been. I thought up until then I was going to need to do a Bachelor of, I just lost my microphone for a second, a Bachelor of Arts, for example, and major in media, or there wasn't even media back then, probably major in marketing. But then out it came with the very, very first one as a Bachelor of Communications. So that was very exciting. And so I feel like it was TV, radio, writing, and really I'd already done a journalism diploma before that when I left school. But I feel like communications has been at the crux of every single thing I've done with my career. And really it is for all of us, isn't it? But in terms of media, marketing, writing, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, love this topic, Jenny. Love it.
What I love about what you just did then, when you're just kind of talking about all the different the things that you studied in the space that you've been playing for the last 30 plus years, is that when we're talking about communication, we often only think of the way we speak or the way that we write. but there's so many other ways that we communicate, particularly in a business sense, and particularly when we're talking social media marketing. So there's different communication styles and the different mediums in which you communicate. They're all, it's like different entities, isn't it? You can't just necessarily carry the same style, the same language across each of those mediums. We have to be really mindful about how we're sharing the message, don't we?
Absolutely. And Jenni, part of what we had to study that was part of the compulsory part was politics. It was also the Māori Indigenous language we had to study and all kinds of things, because if you're going to do something to do with communications out there in the business world, then there's certain things you just need to know and understand and know how to pronounce things and stuff like that. So it was, and, you know, obviously then I've carried that with me through my life, which is important.
I can imagine going through a comms degree, though, then realizing you have to do politics. You're like, I was doing comms, not politics or law. Why am I doing comms? But why am I doing politics? But as you've just described, then being able to be aware and understand those nuances and the different styles of language is really important, which brings us back to that, to the different communication styles. So we're talking digital media and digital marketing. So you've got you've got our digital images or our captions on our socials, but then you've got our reels or our videos or our shorts. And then we have our blogs and our emails. And each of those have a slightly different nuance, which we've talked about a lot in the last couple of months. But it's such a really important piece because it really does ensure that we're getting our message across to our customers or our potential customers. And if we don't think about the medium, we might not land that message well.
Absolutely. And I think even when you look at the space that you're working in, you're communicating with corporate people, but you're also communicating with small businesses, you're communicating in a myriad of ways. So all of us do that every single day in our business. If you have a shop in a town, you're communicating with customers and suppliers and, you know, potential employees and that kind of thing. So, and the shop owner next door, where you go and buy your pie at lunch or whatever. So we're all communicating every single day of our lives. And now it's just changed so much because now we communicate so much online and we communicate via text. And I was writing this social post yesterday just for my own personal Facebook that was talking about the different generations. So you and I are Gen X, but I found out that there's one tiny subgroup in that, which is called a Zennial. Have you heard of that? So I'm not officially a Zennial, because it's 1977 to 1982. So it's this tiny little group. But what was interesting is I feel like I am the Zennial when you read the description of it, because it's those that grew up without any of the digital, but their entire working life has been with the digital. And I thought that was and because my first job out of uni was in London, and I talked my boss into getting AOL, or somehow we found out about AOL and off we went, like, so really quickly in that job. So, and, you know, we still had a computer, even though we weren't using the internet in the way that we know it these days. So the point being, though, is that it's fascinating when I was doing all this reading up about these different generations and the way that things have changed in terms of the way we communicate. So I asked the question of everybody when I put it up, which was, what was the favorite thing that you feel for whichever generation you're in growing up? What was the favorite thing that came out of that? And I wrote that for me, it was that we didn't have smartphones. And even though so many people think, I just love a smartphone, et cetera, but we can't be tracked back then. You know, we couldn't. One of the things is that I don't have anything to be worried about in terms of shame that's going to happen on the internet if a photo of me appears from years ago or something, because they just weren't around that back then. You know, that people could just get the camera at the club or something. So I feel very lucky to be in a very different era of communication back then, but just as I feel lucky to be in this era of it now.
It's such a kind of critical point that you've talked about there, in terms of the fact that there is a generation like you and I who the idea of being able to just live without a smartphone and go about your daily lives without having to worry about the privacy issues. Privacy was about whether someone's looking over your fence or in your front window. And now these these days it's about whether someone's, as you say, tracking you online, following every post, seeing where you're at, and those issues that came out when we first started to do that. I mean, I remember when Instagram first came out and people were doing that trend of let's post everywhere I'm eating and everywhere I'm going. People were recognizing how easy it was for people to actually follow them. And, you know, I've gone to this cafe and then this place and then this place, and then someone could actually see how individuals lead their daily lives. We started to think about security in a different way. And so when we think about, you know, the different mediums of communication style, even the intention around communication has changed for us, I think, over the last couple of years, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, where there is that, and then all the discussions around how much Facebook's tracking us. You know, when we get to Siri about whether, you know, you talk to your family about something and all of a sudden you're seeing shoes online or you're seeing holidays online because they're listening to what you're saying. It's changed the way that we not only communicate with each other, but also how we communicate with the information that we see ourselves, right? It's actually forming our different thought patterns, and it's helping us create and directing our thought patterns.
Yes, and it's interesting though, isn't it? Because when we were kids, we had advertising way more targeted at us because, I don't know about for you, but for me in New Zealand, we only had 2 TV channels and only one of them had advertising on it. One of them was government channel. Then we got a 3rd channel when I was in my probably mid-teens. So there was more advertising than I got to see. But you can be sure when that Barbie doll was advertised, we all knew about it. It's not like there was a lot of different options. And obviously the algorithm with social media changes according to, yes, you're right, what you're talking about or what you're looking at. So it shows you more of that. So the advertising is certainly very different the way it's coming at you. Whereas back in my day, it was a whole lot less of it, but coming at you way harder.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think we sort of forget that because we often think now that, you know, because Siri or Alexa's listening to you, then it's more targeted. But you are correct in that way that it was far more overt back in the day. It was far more open, and it was almost you know, open advertising. You know, this is what we want you to buy. I'm going to put it on television for you 25 times a day so that you will eventually go and buy. You might not do it today or tomorrow, but eventually you'll nag your parents enough that you want to get that thing. Whereas now it's this kind of almost covert way of connecting us. So sometimes we don't even know why we're looking up something. It's just that it's come up on our feed and we click a button because as you said, the algorithm. So that kind of the different communication styles and those mediums are really impacting the way that we engage in all aspects, whether it's sending a meme to somebody or whether it's, you know, that's the biggest thing I think I've seen change recently in terms of that different communication styles and mediums is the use of memes as a really cool way of communicating. Before we'd send a long text message or we'd make a phone call or leave a voicemail, and now it's really, okay, well, I'm just going to send one meme. We read the meme and then we put an emoji at it or a comment and we're done. That's our communication, right? It's changed. It's not this verbal communication. It's not connection. It's, hey, have you seen the meme? I like it. That's cool. And we move on.
Absolutely. And, you know, there's one sad bit in that, I think, is that think about love letters from when you were a teen or something, or even when you hear about your grandparents' love letters. That's something really, really special. And those just don't exist anymore. So and you know, you'd know it would take a week or 2 to get to them if they were overseas, or probably a whole lot more than that. The postcards from my granny, or when I was living in England, the letters from my dad, and then the faxes have completely all, you know, faded away to nothing. So it's interesting, isn't it, how we've evolved with that. Whereas now, if I was living there and he was still alive, there would probably be some texts or a quick little message on Messenger and some FaceTime, but it wouldn't be those beautiful long letters.
No, and there's no more telegrams. Like, we're getting married, or I'm getting married with my partner next year, and thinking about those ideas of having, you know, a telegram read out. I remember that at my sister's wedding, people wouldn't just send a letter; they send an old school telegram. So you get a telegram that has, you know, that lovely printed of, hey, this is from Aunt whoever it is, wishing you the best on your important day, or whatever that message was. And having those telegrams, it really does change. And I thought about that last week because we were rearranging our spare room, and I found my box that has all my old letters from people from probably when I was a teenager. And looking through those, it was quite kind of reminiscent of, you know, my friends would write me, best friends writing us letters when we go on camp, or if we've gone away for 6 weeks on break without our friends, we would write to each other, and you think, wow, when was the last time I sat down and wrote a letter to a friend because I was going on holiday and not going to see them for 2 weeks? Like, we just don't do that because there isn't that absence of communication. Communication, I think that's one of the telling pieces. Communication is now constant. There isn't that break from communication anymore. It's constant. So on the weekend, I was away and I didn't have my phone, and I was like not having that constant communication. It was so nice not to have that constant, barrage of information, because you could just take a break. And we often forget that how important that break, as much as communication is important in our business, we also need to think about how are our clients and customers receiving that, and how are we bombarding them? Are we sending them too many things, or are we giving them just the right information?
I think that's such a good point. I've got a situation at the moment where we like to run our whole company through Messenger. So we set up a Messenger support team for the clients. We ourselves as a team have different Messenger groups. And to me, it's a very good way. I can have it set up on my second screen. It flashes when I want it to, but I can turn off the notifications on my phone for after hours. So it keeps, to me, really clean and tidy. One of the reasons I like it so much is that with email, especially when there's a lot of people in emails, it can get pretty messy with the back and forth and all of that. And right now we have this client that we've been working with for around about a year who doesn't like Messenger, doesn't want a bar of it. So we've been trying to do it on her terms with email, but she's got at least 4 or 5 people that she needs to CC in on everything. And so it's a lot going on, and there's things getting missed. And what I found, and it's interesting you said before about the emoji reply or whatever, is what I've found with this is that often I don't feel the need to reply to the whole thing with a thumbs up. You wouldn't do that on an email, but it doesn't warrant anything more than, great, I've seen that, thanks. But on Messenger, you can so easily just give it the little thumbs up.
Yeah.
So it's I feel like with some people, we're in this tricky in-between stage of how we're communicating with them. So communicating in that workplace, yes, we need them to come and meet us where we're at, but we're not quite ready for all that, for all the people to be doing all of that just yet. So tricky times.
I completely agree, and I think that communication in the workplace is important, because the way we communicate on our mobile phone and devices and through the internet, 85% of our time translates to how we work in the workplace, right? I remember back in the day, I got somebody took offense in the office because I responded, and I just wrote, I didn't say hi, such and such. I was like, I think I was just responding on a quick message saying, yeah, no problem, sounds good, thanks, regards, Jenni. And I had a conversation with my manager because I didn't write hi, such and such's name, and I just put regards, I didn't put kind regards, and they took offense to that. And I'm just going, it blew my mind, because these days someone's going to message me on Teams and it will be like, hey Jay, hey Jenni, can I have this, blah, 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 and I'll just sign their name with their initial, and I'll respond being like, hi L, yep, no problem, Jay. And like this kind of shortcut way of communicating, even on email or Teams, is how the people that I work with are really comfortable responding that way. But I remember back 15, 20 years ago, and I would have been sitting down having performance management conversations once a month, because I didn't have this formalized structure, and there was people taking offense at that kind of relaxed style. So I think there has to be that shift, and there's starting to be that shift in that, colloquial style, relaxed style, because we're using Teams, we're using Yammer, we're using Messenger, we're using Slack, even, WhatsApp. There's so many different communication methodologies in the workplace. We have to shift the way that we look at communication. We have to shift the style that we use just to be able to respond to those communication styles.
Absolutely. And you're so right that more colloquial term of use of language, like I will always end every email with cheers or have a great day, and that is certainly not formal. So no. That's fine. That's the type of people I want to work with and everything, but it's not always fine. So yeah, we're living in a very interesting age and stage for sure. There's still a whole lot of old school going on, but there's a lot of new school, and how much of the new school do we want?
That's very true. So how do you see sort of some of the barriers and misunderstandings that come out by this shift? And I talked about the fact that back on email, I had that disruption because people thought I wasn't being nice, that I was being disrespectful because I didn't write kind regards or say hi, such and such's name. So what are some of the common barriers? current barriers in communication misunderstandings that we see now because of this shift in communication?
Well, there's a lot of that goes on in my world behind the scenes. And I would presume it goes on in everybody's world behind the scenes. But it's really, really challenging because that's the tone even that's done in a text. So, for example, I would, there's a particular, what is it? Some letter that I'll do with my husband, but he thinks that it's the why letter. So he'll ask me a question. I'm on Zoom. I can't really be saying, oh, excuse me, I'm just going to text my husband back, but I can very quickly do a letter Y, which is yes, right? I'm just saying yes to his thing. But then he starts this barrage of texts. What do you mean why? Because he's thinking I'm saying why, as in why question mark, not yes. And then it goes on, and I'm just thinking, dude, what on earth? So that's just one tiny letter that's getting misconstrued. So what about all of the things where it's not quite the right emoji, or you and I feel differently about an emoji? So someone said to me recently that they didn't understand why I was always praying, and like that seemed quite bold of me in my messages. And I'm like, no, it's please or thank you or something. They're like, no, it's not. It's literally, I'm praying for you. And she said, that's such a bold choice in business. And wow. So there you go. Misunderstandings, they don't have to be the big ones like with the she said, he said. It literally can just be a letter or an emoji or even getting the question mark at the end of something. So then it's more like a demand rather than a request.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because sometimes we are so busy, and I know we've got a WhatsApp group with one of my clients that I work with, and we also use Microsoft Teams, and sometimes we'll go into a meeting and we'll get barrages of like content that I haven't seen because I've been away for like 2 hours, and I'll come back and there'll just be this message trail that goes crazy. But one of my groups, we communicate in GIFs. So everybody just chooses different GIFs or GIFs for to express how we're feeling or to respond to something. And even some of those I've looked at and been like, oh, I don't know if that's the right choice for this group, because it kind of looks and goes, are you sad? Are you okay? Do I need to have a conversation with you? And it's then just like, no, I'm all good. I just thought it was funny, because our perception of things is so different. I think that's one of the barriers, isn't it? Misunderstandings that come out is because what we see, you say, same with an emoji. And same with when you do I use an emoji with, love heart eyes to say, oh my God, thank you so much, you're amazing. And someone's like, who's that? Who are you sending that to? And I'm just like, it's just my team, or it's just, it's the cool girls group. And they're like, that's like love hearts. And like, I was like, yeah, because, they're amazing and I want to show them amazing. And they're like, that's an interesting thing. So the same thing is, how do you choose that emoji? And I think that comes back to that idea of understanding. We said that very first when we talked about communication styles, understanding the audience, understanding what they want, understanding how they're going to respond to that, and making sure we're choosing the right communication style and medium to suit the audience, whether it's our customers, whether it's our team, whether it's our, our managers or our, extended stakeholders or whoever it is. I think it's really important now. We have so many more mediums we have to worry about than we did back in the day.
So many more. So not only do we have to think about how we're doing that communication and how it's being received, but also where are they communicating? So, for example, we've had, a big shuffle around with our team, et cetera, over the last few months, and there's been no one really managing the Hello Media Instagram or Messenger. That's not fair to say no one has been, but certainly not a few times a day. So it's maybe been more like a few times a week. And so there's been things getting missed. And I'm like, oh, do they have to message me in all the places? It really is a lot. And a little plug now for Meta Business Suite. Thank goodness for that, because you can do it all in there without being distracted by going on Facebook or whatever, which is really good. But again, still, it's just too many places. I got to the gym this morning and I saw a lady there that had texted me on Friday saying, what if I want to do all of your masterclasses and not just pick 3, for example? And I didn't reply because I was busy. And then all weekend I've been studying. And then all of a sudden it was Monday morning. And I thought, oh, I probably should apologize for not responding. And then I was thinking, although it was the weekend. So should I? It's so, even the communication around that. My mum, on the other hand, who runs a very, very busy business that's an after hours business. So she thinks it's very important to email people at 10 o'clock at night. If they email her, she'll reply straight away. And I'm like, I would be shocked if you replied to me at 10 at night.
I have a client at the moment who do that, and I get bombarded with the way that they message me, and I get a little bit overwhelmed by it because it'll be on a Saturday, Sunday, and I'm like, I don't work on a Saturday, Sunday, and that's not my. So if you're responding to me, if you're sending me messages back between 4 and 6 p.m., which is when they're online, I'm not going to get to that till the next day. Like, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to, take away my evenings with my family because you're only messaging between 4 and 6 or 1 and 3 in the afternoon because I have other meetings. So I'll do it the next day or the next morning early my time. So we always have this delay. But I think that goes back to that barriers and miscommunications. What are the expectations that people have set? But again, one of the barriers is that overwhelm that we get because we now have to manage our communication for every individual client or team. Whereas before there was a set of core principles that everybody really lived by in business, whether it was, advertising or email or telephone or even old school door knocking. There was a understanding of when you could do that, when you couldn't do that, how much was acceptable, the tone that you used, and everybody knew the rules. And I think one of the key things that has changed is there are no rules anymore about when you can and cannot message and what you can and cannot message anymore, because it changes depending on the client, the time, the business that you're in. And I think that's the biggest thing that we have to recognize is when we're talking about communication, there's no longer any rules. There's no longer established rules for everybody. And so as soon as you understand that, and the quicker you understand that in business, the more successful you're going to be, because then you have to start setting your own boundaries and your own rules for your business that work for you, whether that be work on the weekend like your mum does or the evening, or whether that's like me. I'm going to message people between 4 and 6 in the morning because that's when I'm up and on my computer. That's okay. It's what are the rules that work for you, and make sure everyone's clear about those expectations.
I couldn't agree more. And I've got one more rule I'd like to add to that, Jenni, and that is use the option on your phone to turn it to do not disturb or turn it to focus or whatever. Set it up so that, for example, when I'm on the weekend, I always have it switched over to no notifications, and I can still check in on them, but they're not going to come at me, which is really, really important because I want to be the one in control of what I see, and I don't want to see everything. So I think that's a really important thing, is setting your boundaries, but then following through and actually either turning your do not disturb on or your focus on or whatever, or just going and putting it in another room.
Yeah, put it in a lockbox over dinner or when you're having time with your family. So we've talked about a couple of things. We've talked about the different mediums and the different styles that we have to consider with customers, how that impacts the way in the workplace for those misunderstandings and barriers. But I think that key takeaway from me from this conversation is that to set our own rules. There are no standard rules for any business. So when you start your business or as you start to evolve in your business, be really clear on what your communication rules are for your internal business and in your external business. And that's really going to help you put some boundaries in place so that you can manage that communication more effectively. What would be your tip, do you think?
I'm just going to add one more to that, and that is, even though and this has just happened to us recently, even though you know that you've set that and made it clear with a new client, for example, there's that onboarding process, there's all the things that go on with that. That doesn't mean they necessarily read every word of that. So maybe there needs to be a reminder and a follow-up so that they don't perhaps feel stressed that they don't know what's going on. And so
it's a great point.
That's a really important piece, is that when something's new at the beginning, you don't necessarily take it all on board. So having that follow-up, and maybe even then another follow-up is with those, doesn't even mean you need to be chatting. It's just reminders in the various ways, but also making it super clear.
And it's what we do in our socials. It's what you do as a marketer anyway. You have to make sure there's that constant reminder. It's not one message and hope it lands. It's making sure we repeat that message until it lands, until either changes the behaviour that we want or it actually gets the outcome that we want. So really, really great tip that I think permeates every part of our business, is that consistency and reminders of both your clients and your internal rules. Love that. Great tip. So Kylie, if people want to learn more about the way that you share your communication and your amazing new skills that you're learning with your course that you're on, but also just the way that you help people communicate better online, how do we get in contact with you?
Jump onto hellomedia.team and it's got links to all the various socials, and jump into our Facebook group, Hello Media, because there's so many new things happening in there all the time as I'm sharing latest updates and stuff. So what about you, Jenni? How can people get in touch with you?
The best way is elephantintheroomau.com is our website, or Elephant in the Room AU on our socials. So find us at any of those. Reach out. You can set up a discovery call. We play a little bit in the communication space. That's really your sweet spot. We're looking more about how you can run your business and set up those boundaries and those structures and processes to make sure that you can follow through with everything you need to in your business and make sure that your communication lands when they get a great strategy from you. Beautiful.
I love it. So good. I love that you're playing in that boundaries space. It's so important. So important.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us today, Kylie. It's been wonderful to chat. Thank you to everyone else who's listening and tuning into this episode of Bite Size Business Live podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us so you don't miss any future opportunities or any episodes. And we look forward to seeing you next week. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
And happy traveling, happy flying, Jenni.
Thanks so much, Kylie. Bye, everyone.
See you. Bye-bye.